Hello and welcome to Through the Reticle. So this is Through the Reticule with your host Sam Turner, that's me. Just a reminder that you can get all the information about this and many more like it at InRetroSpectPodcast.com. Also, if you're so inclined, reviews and ratings of this podcast and all the other shows on the aforementioned website can be left on iTunes. And also at Stitcher Radio. We're on there now as well. Oh, and don't forget, just while I'm doing this little bit of housekeeping before you enter the door of Through the Reticule, recently the gang and I did a huge special on Naughty Dog recently. So check that out in InRetroSpectPodcast.com. So now the show can begin. And it begins with a bit of philosophical musings. And I'll leave you with this. What do you think of this? To get the most out of life, one must always take the most difficult path. Wise words of wisdom there, from no one in particular, but they do sound like something someone might have said somewhere at some point in time. And whoever that soul was, maybe they have a point. For it's only when we truly challenge ourselves or test our mettle that we can feel pride, satisfaction and genuine reward. Taking the road well travelled might get us to the same destination, but where would be the fun in doing that? The problem with this mortal state that we all inhabit is that we often don't get a choice of which path we desire to take. As life bandies on around us with gay abandon, we have little agency to shape a desire of where to go and which way to do it, which often, I think, makes us favour easier ways when they're matched up to their more difficult cousins. When no one knows what the world is going to turn into next, it is best, for now, to trundle down the track of least resistance, and everything will be fine in the end. The problem with this approach is that when we're forced to take life in hard mode, we have little time to prepare or face up to what that will bring, and the good Lord will not let you bump it down to easy if things get a little rough. And it's here that the podcast really begins. Firstly, because it's getting harder to keep up this difficult metaphor, and secondly, because it's becoming increasingly obvious what subject I want to spout out about from my virtual soapbox. Once again, video games have trumped life. Once again, they've shown us all the right way to go about living, and what a better world this could be if only they had come before us instead of the other way around. For me, when I start a new game for the first time, the difficulty select screen is one of those underappreciated elements of gaming that goes incredibly overlooked. Usually, it's the last thing you press before you start a title for the first time, and more often than not, it provides the precedent upon which the rest of your time with that game will be based. For some lesser humans, choosing the difficulty at which you play a game is a blind choice. For you and for me, humans with a higher state of cognitive function, we understand that choosing a difficulty is not a straightforward choice, and is something to be pondered over and considered upon each new playthrough or newly unwrapped content. In this episode of Through the Reticule, it will be with easy charm, a medium sprinkling of wit, and a hard delivery that I will show how the choice of choosing a difficulty is more difficult than first appears. Now, as I've written about before, often in blogs, I think, if I recall, I might even spoken about it on previous episodes of Through the Reticle, I take great care in choosing which difficulty I'm going to tackle in a game. For each game is different, and each title deserves to be judged upon its own merits. This might seem like an utterly hellish way to go about playing games, but to me it makes sense to not take the choice of difficulty lightly and to use it to form the way I will go about the title in question. At its most basic, the majority of games stick with 3 difficulty variants. You have your easy, your medium, / casual, normal, and hard. Lately, games have added depth and insight into what all of these actually mean, but on the most part, they correspond to nothing more but to how much the computer or console fights you back, and how much of a wall it puts up in front of you. For the most part, the majority of us will plump for the centre ground and not venture anywhere past normal or medium difficulty. It's not too hard, it's not too soft. Now, Daniel Frost, of free play fame, you'll know his voice if you heard it, once told me that normal represents the difficulty level that the designers want you to play at. Dan's theory, as it will forever be named, Dan's theory states that a designer wants you to play their game on normal, for that provides the most rounded experience of the title. And essentially, as Dan's theory states, that's how they want you to play it. Now, as sound as a hypothesis Dan's theory is, there are a couple of ways that this school of thought could be broken down. Sure, it makes sense that medium should represent the most balanced version of a game, but I would argue that first and foremost, at the beginnings of a game, a designer is not caring about difficulty. I would have thought that they want accessibility. Now, putting aside titles like Bit Trip Runner, Mega Man 9 and Demon Souls, which are essentially games renowned and played for their difficulty, I would argue that if a gamer is giving you a choice, whereas the majority of those previous titles don't, then they're essentially saying that they want you to enjoy playing the game over than stating a required difficulty level to get the most out of it. If that's true, then medium, therefore, isn't the essential experience, but instead a version of the game that will suit the majority of playing styles. Because difficulty is not only a measure of how well you think you can play games, choosing a difficulty level is also contextual. Personally, it can vary from title to title depending on the kind of experience I want to have. If I have the choice, I take that as a cue from the game director that they want me to choose, that I shouldn't assume that one difficulty style is better than another, that their game will prevail no matter how you play it. When I begin a new game, I often do take a short while to decide which difficulty to play it on. I know I'm such an exciting fellow to have around, but for me the choice of playing a certain difficulty has a dramatic effect on the way I approach the game I'm playing. On the most part, my choice of difficulty comes down to time and my thoughts on how much of that I have available to put into the game, and also, does this game deserve to have lots of time spent upon it? Most games that I pick up and play, I'm often doing so because I have some inherent interest in just a small part of them, whether it be their gameplay mechanics, the story that they're trying to tell, or maybe their graphical prowess. So the majority of time I notch the difficulty to easy, so I can experience these elements without the added fuss of the game fighting against me. Playing on easy, in my opinion, isn't the wimp's way out. Not if you want to really feel accepted and freely able to revel in the gaming experience. Now, for example, at the moment I'm playing Catherine and Spec Ops: The Line. And in this case, I'm playing both of them for their interesting approach to story, not essentially for their puzzle mechanics or for the amount of shooting and killing that's going on. So for that reason, I'm playing them both on easy. I don't want to have to struggle against the games. I want to enjoy them like a good book. And I want the experience to really just wash over me for the most part. And for me to be as passive as possible, because I know that what I want to get out of the game is just to enjoy the story. Now, not only does changing to a more casual playing style affect my experience, but shifting the game down to easy also has a dramatic effect on the way the game comes across. For example, in Spec Ops: The Line, the main difference that the difficulty makes, as it appears to me, is how easy it is to kill the enemies that are in front of you. So instead of taking 15 shots to down a snarling rogue soldier, instead it takes Nolan North and his crew only 2 or 3. For me, slamming down enemies in Dubai in only 2 or 3 hits actually makes the game feel a bit more authentic in the way it approaches military might. Often when playing a game like Uncharted on normal, I only end up beginning to question the reality of the situation where people can survive being shot multiple times. However, in Spec Ops: The Line, easy mode, enemies behave in a more realistic fashion, which is having a dramatic effect on the way I approach and play the game, and indeed the way the story then comes across to me. I feel a lot more involved in the characterization of the on-screen roles, as I can behave like the specialist marines that they're meant to be. In Catherine as well, notching the difficulty to casual is outlined right at the start as an option for those who want to enjoy the story, and you essentially just get a helping hand when it comes to the puzzling, so you're not spending too much time away from the narrative. I feel that these days difficulty is all about accessibility, and for a gamer like me who enjoys narrative and storytelling devices over gameplay, having this option is a welcome addition. Also, it has to be said that playing a game on a lower difficulty to the norm has a dramatic effect on the timescale it takes to complete the game in question. For someone like me, where my time is being constantly snagged, divided and conquered, it's refreshing to think that I can pick up a game and for it to allow me to play it without trying to also tie up my time. Of course, all this difficulty switching around does not only happen one way. There have been several occasions where I have diligently chosen to up the difficulty of a selected game in order to give myself a challenge. Just like dropping down the difficulty can enhance the narrative experience, hitching up the dress of challenge can enhance the mechanics and gameplay of a title. Most recently, I did this during my first playthrough of Resident Evil 5. For some unknown reason, I decided to start playing the game on Veteran from the off. I am by no means a devilish gaming dervish, but I decided that I wanted to be challenged by the game. And also, when it comes to survival horror, I thought that stepping up the difficulty will have a dramatic alteration on the amount of ammo, items and enemies, all factors that can effectively increase attention and make for a more exhilarating experience. Such silly ideas that I'm a player that can handle the most difficulty of titles of all is something that rarely happens. I'm not ashamed to say that on the most part I'm taking the casual route these days and trying to develop my gaming vocabulary as effectively as possible. Now, just like there are games that I want to casually wash over me and others that I want to challenge, there are of course some that I require the balanced experience. Choosing normal is often the pathway I take when I will buy a landmark game or I'm playing in co-op, as I like to experience a level playing field of both gameplay and narrative. Take the outstanding The Last of Us, for example, my thoughts of which can be found, ideally, as part of our Naughty Dog special series, InRetroSpectpodcast.com, just go there. I knew that to get the best of The Last of Us, I would need to allow both the story and the gameplay to be naturally balanced. That in order to fully engage and get the best out of it, I would have to be challenged whilst playing it. A decision that would leave me to empathise more with the desperate situation of the characters and also allow me enough breathing space to not feel cheated or a victim of foul play by the game if it was on too hard a setting, especially on my first playthrough. I guess what I'm saying is that in a way Dan's theory does work, and to get the most balanced view of a game then you do have to shoot your arrows down the middle. However, I'm of the opinion that difficulty is not just a barometer of skill, but it essentially allows us as gamers to decide how we want to play a game. The next time you take the wrapper off a new game and slip it graciously into the slot, then just think about what you want to get out of the title and which difficulty will suit how you want to play. Easy, I think, delivers story and experience in spades for those games that you might not want to engage with completely. Hard provides the challenge at the sacrifice of this narrative, and normal provides the balance. As with most things in games, choosing a difficulty shouldn't be a straightforward choice. It should be something you should not commit to lightly. You never know. It might just alter the way you play and interact with games in the future. So there we have it. That's another episode with Through the Reticle. Because I'm being very industrious this month, all the details of where to leave reviews, where you can find us, the website, I put at the start of the podcast, which I've done before and really helps when it comes to this little end blurb. The only thing I didn't mention was Twitter stuff. I'm at Mr. Sam Turner. I like to keep that official. And at InRetroSpect, at InRetroSpect. You can find the gremlin who does all of our PR badly. So enjoy him, enjoy us, InRetroSpectPodcast.com. And I'll speak to you soon. Free plays next week. Bye.